Hey there, personal health and wellness. Welcome to video one, where we're going to talk about assessing our wellness. And we want to begin by simply stating that you cannot manage what you do not measure. And so it's very important for us to be able to do that. Now, how do you measure something so ambiguous like health? Well, you're going to have to look for some evidence. And that's what we're going to simply ask you to do in our first assignment. But before we begin to that, let's have a little conversation and maybe even let me give you some input as to what's going on in my own health. That way you can have a point of reference when assessing your own. So I start by simply saying that health has several dimensions. In fact, it is a multi-dimensional term. It doesn't just simply mean physical health. And right here I've established for you 8 dimensions that are known to be health and wellness dimensions. And this has been replicated by several sources, and so it really kind of depends on where you go and what you look for. Some folks will only limit this to 6. I've gone ahead and went with 8 because I feel like that each of these things really does determine a part of how we handle our wellness. And so you'll see that we're going to start by talking about physical. We're going to then move into social wellness. And then we're going to see intellectual, emotional, environmental, spiritual, occupational, and financial. These dimensions are a continuum and they blend into each other. And I want you to think about them as though they are a wheel. And if there were a flat spot in this wheel, well, it wouldn't turn right, and it would affect the other aspects of the wheel eventually, causing damage or possibly failure to even be able to operate, right? So we want to consider how dimensions affect across other dimensions. So when we begin to talk about assessment or assessing our own wellness, we need a tool to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis is actually something that comes from the business world, where a person would measure their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats on a specific topic. Well, one thing that needs to happen is we need to understand what strengths are. They are good things that have happened or are currently happening. That means that they are in our lives. A weakness, on the other hand, is a negative thing that's happening or has happened, but again, it's in our lives. An opportunity, well, that's something that if it did happen would be very positive. A threat is something that if it did happen would be very negative. And so strengths and opportunities are only very synonymous in the fact that they're good or positive. But a strength actually has happened where an opportunity has not. But if it did, it would be good, right? And then a weakness is something that already has happened. A threat is something that if it did happen, it would be bad. So now, with that in mind, let's consider our first dimension, and that is physical wellness. This is our body shape, the way it functions, the amount of strength and endurance that we have. Also, it's our body's ability to resist illnesses and disease and even impairments. And so we have to consider that this thing that we kind of often think of as our health physically is a very important one, and it's one that we're going to study most specifically in this class. But also we need to think, what are the larger influences that physical health really kind of hinges on? Well, those are 3 things. Number 1 is our physical activity or exercise. Number 2 is our nutrition and diet. And number 3 is our sleep health. And we have to ask this question: what is it that we do for optimal sleep, optimal nutrition, and optimal physical activity? Because that's what's going to ultimately dictate our physical wellness. So again, that's the physical, or that's the focus of this course. And we're going to really push down to try to nail a discipline or a habit on those things. I want to now tell you about my own physical wellness and some of the things that I've done to measure that. First of all, let me look at my strengths. And all of us have different strengths. And one thing that we really have to say before we go any further is that every body is different. And so every body is going to need something different to make it strong or to make it weak or to give it an opportunity or to give it a threat. And so let's keep that in mind that we're all individual and this is just happens to be my strengths. You're going to get your chance to look at yours very soon. But for physical wellness, my strengths are number one, my exercise habits. I told you that I'm very excited about exercise and physical activity. And one of the things that we know is that exercise is directly related to physical wellness. I try to exercise 5 to 6 times a week. Um, Many of those days, I will actually do 2 exercise sessions in a day. And that happens because I do some carryover. And you're going to understand that more when we get into the physical activity modules. But that's just something that I do, and I enjoy it. Another thing that's a strength of mine is I really enjoy focusing in on and experimenting with my diet and nutrition. But my diet specifically includes a lot of nutrient dense food, high quality, very low processed foods. It also is very focused on water and hydration. I'll talk about that in the next video. And then number three, I've really tried to get the right types of supplements in every day. Number three for me is I have an incredibly supportive family, but I also have an incredibly supportive job. And both of those things are really impactful to getting the things that I want to do in for physical activity, meaning that my family will let me get up early in the morning and do the things that I want to do. They also kind of give me a pass on the weekends if I want to go catch a mountain bike ride with a friend. My job actually allows me to shower at work, and so I can come here, do my workout, and then shower here, and then be ready for the day. I have some weaknesses though that I want to tell you about too with physical wellness. And number one is and I include this in there is family. And I don't want you to take this in a negative sense. I love my family. My family is first in my life. But sometimes family will have things that come up and that will shift my priorities from exercise to taking care of my family. And so it is a weakness and it has happened before where I've had a kid get sick and I can't quite make it to my early morning run, or I have a kid who has a ball game and I can't make it to a scheduled mountain bike ride that I've thought I was going to. Those things happen and they're going to get in the way. Another thing that I have that's a weakness of mine is immunity. It's going to happen where because I have 4 kids, they're going to bring home every bug that happens to be in their school. And it's probably going to come my way. And I'm probably going to get sick and I'm probably not going to be able to work out that day or for 2 days or for 3 days. I've missed a week before because of the flu, and that's just part of it, right? You're going to have to heal and get that thing taken care of before you can move on to exercise. But that's exercise. I'm saying from physical wellness, I'm going to get sick. It's just a given. When you have 4 kids, it's a given. Number three for me is hyperphagia. And if you've never heard this word before, don't be alarmed. That's a medical terminology word, and it simply means I overeat. Because of the way I structure my diet, but also my timing of feeding, many times I eat my largest meal of the day late in the day. It's something that I've found that works for me. And it also happens to be a meal where I really enjoy the food that I'm going to eat. Most of the time it's at home. And it just happens that I kind of overeat sometimes. And I hope that that's not your problem too, but it's definitely one of mine. And when I overeat, I feel bad and it definitely can have some problems to my physical health. I have some opportunities that I'd like to share. Number one is I'm an early riser. It's just something that I do where I like to get up early in the morning. I like to do my workout early in the morning. There's some health benefits that go along to that. I like to do a fasted workout. But by doing that, it allows me the time to get up and do my workout. It also allows me the time to get up and structure some of my meals. And then furthermore, that puts me in bed earlier, because if I get up early, I want to get my 8 hours of sleep in, so I'm going to bed early. And to do that, I have to protect my sleep, and I'm going to talk more about that too later. I'm also a lifelong studier. And if I want to get into something, I'm going to study it. And I get this crazy hyper focus, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But I really like to study things and know all there is about them. I have some threats that will affect my physical wellness. And number one is I have a family history of cardiovascular disease, and that has definitely got me motivated that I don't want to die early from America's largest killer. Number two is I have a family history that I was exposed to a lot of secondhand smoke from basically age 0 to 18. And I have to tell you, that has given me some great concern over, is that going to affect my health later? Number three is I'm around my kids, but I'm also around students. That's a part of my job. And again, they're going to bring every bug in with them. And so I have to really think about, people coming into my office or my classroom or even in my home, and they're sneezing. And, I may want to take some precautionary measures because of that. The next health dimension that I want to talk about is social. And social wellness is very important because number one, loneliness is a key indicator at suicide risk. And so we want to know that people are lonely, and then we want to affect that. And if it's you, then please come and talk to me, and let's have a conversation about getting you connected. But that's exactly what this is being connected to, check this out, deep satisfying relationships. Now I know that you have 5,000 followers on Instagram, but those are not deep relationships. Those are people you probably will never even meet. What I'm talking about are the 3 to 5 people that are in your life who know you really well, and they also have a vested interest in seeing good in your life. You see, Aristotle, who is mentioned down here, says that there are 3 types of relationships. Number one, a very utilitarian relationship, which means what can you do good for me, or is there a quid pro quo that could happen here? Number two, it's for pleasure. We all have those friends who are, they're our mountain bike buddies, our golf buddies, our croquet buddies, our card playing buddies, people we just see every day when we go in for coffee. They share in common interests, but that's just about the limit of that relationship. And then Aristotle says the one that really matters the most is the ones who are in your lives and they want good for your life. And you have to think about that really closely for a minute and think, who are these people who really want good in my life? Those are the relationships that are going to matter. I want you to also know I've linked a video to this right here, the Harvard Medical Study of Adult Development, and how it talks about that relationships are the single greatest pathway to happiness. There's a video right below. Hope you watch that and find some interest in that. And then also, I've done a deep dive where I talk about this right here, and I've linked it to a podcast that I hope you listen to. It's not required, but it's definitely something that might help you if social wellness is an area that you're hoping to improve in. Our next dimension, or our next SWOT analysis, is my specific strengths here. Number one, I have a wife and I've been married for 16 years. I have 4 kids. I have a built-in social network, but it's still up to me to take care of those. Again, I want to see good for my wife. I want to see good for my kids. And so that's a very top level, high producing relationship. And it's up to me, though, to make sure that that happens. Number two, I go on regular runs with friends. Now, on first view, that kind of sounds more utilitarian or even pleasure, but what you have to understand is that's probably where it started. Now it is definitely a relationship where I want good for them, they want good for me. We communicate about a lot of other things, not just running or biking, but that's just kind of an area that I've landed where a lot of my friends have formed. And number three, I'm connected to a community group. That community group is made up of 5 couples. We meet in my home every Sunday night. We are going through life together because we all earn about the same income. We have kids who are about the same age. And most importantly, we are very much directed in the same way, that we believe and have values that are similar. And so that's a really important thing too. And we get connected every week, and we're doing life together, and we're sharing each other's burdens. We're also sharing each other's joys, and we're lifting each other up. and we text a little bit through the week to just kind of reiterate that. A number of or the next thing that is listed there is I go to a weekly coaching session. I have a mentor who I meet every Friday morning, and we have some coffee and we talk about the week, and he really helps me. And this is not a paid position, because this is just a guy out there who is investing into me and pouring into me. And that's the important part of this, is that someone in my life is helping me and guiding me very specifically. And I have to have a lot of respect, trust, and vulnerability to let this guy do it effectively. And so those are things that you might want to look at as well. Some weaknesses that I have socially, number one is I am family stretched. If my family needs me, it's definitely going to impede on some social things that may I have, or opportunities that I may have. I'm going to have to cancel some dinner plans, or some plans to ride a mountain bike, or some plans to go on a run, or I'm going to have to even come in and say, listen, we can't meet you guys because of my kid's sick, or my kid needs this, or we have to reiterate this project that we were kind of looking at before, and the kids need help with. So I do have a unique family stretching, but also with those four kids, they're going to also need some care that has to happen on a daily basis, where pre-kids we were able to go out and have all this fun and do things, and we still do, but we have to structure it very differently now, and our focus has to be on the family, because that's the choice we've made. Number three is I'm seasonally invested in my time, where because I'm a teacher, there are certain periods of the year where I'm more busy, or more involved with my work. And so when that happens, I just have to be okay with the fact that I'm not going to get social time. Right now is one of them. We're starting a semester, right? And my focus has to be right here in the moment, helping my students to be successful. And that's just a part of where I'm at with life. I have some opportunities. Number one is I've kind of matured to the idea that relationships have a reality that is not always our expectation, meaning that with the people that I'm connected to, they have very similar issues going on. And so they may also need some empathy or some help, and some free passes when they can't connect socially. Number two is that I am going to meet regularly with my group and my coach. Those are things I've already talked about, but I'm going to keep that opportunity going. I'm going to do what I have to do to make sure my community group is a for sure thing. Even though it hasn't happened, I know it's going to happen, or it can happen, and so I'm gonna nurture that. I'm also going to nurture the relationship with my mentor. Those are opportunities I cannot afford to lose. And number three, there's always going to be impromptu activities where my wife's going to call me and say, hey, listen, the Weirsigs are coming over for dinner tonight. I'm going to be like, sweet, that's awesome. And we're going to have a great conversation about work and about life and kids and, fun stuff too. And so those are going to happen. And I can always expect that to happen. And when it does, I need to make sure that I'm making opportunities open for that. I have some threats. Number one is I have incredible anxiety and paranoia. And this is me being vulnerable with you. Number one is if you have those same things, then I hope that you can reach out to me and say, listen, Kendall, these are some real things that are going on in my life too. What have you done? Well, I will tell you that it has taken some significant work on my end to see some results happen with that. But think about this. Have you ever wondered because someone canceled on you, or maybe they postponed, or they just didn't show up? Was it something personal that you did, or is it now that they no longer like you? Those are things that pop up in my head quite frequently. I also have comparison issues that get in the way. But these are real threats for me. But I've been able to work through them, and I've seen some real balance come out in my life. And I'd love to share with you on a more personal level what it is that I've done to affect that. Number two threats for me is I have family. They're going to get in the way of and I shouldn't say it that way. They're going to get the preference when the preference is needed over me spending time with friends or other people that I want to connect to. Also, work is going to definitely come up. I'm going to have to take care of a report or go see a patient or make sure that I have something, taken care of here in the office before I can go out and have social time with my friends. I also live on a farm, so if a cow gets out, I need to go get that cow and bring it in. And sometimes that's going to cause me to miss dinner with friends. Reality that my friends may also have similar things is my third threat, meaning that I need to give empathy. When I know that my friends go through life in a very similar way, again, I need to be able to say, oh, that stinks, you can't make dinner. Hey, let's get a rain check on that for maybe next week sometime. What about Thursday night? And then I'm going to expect that because I love them and I want good for them, that they're going to be like, yeah, that's great. And they're going to give me the same when I have to do that. That's just a good reciprocity recipe of success. So we now look at this one, intellectual wellness. Intellectual wellness is incredibly unique because this is our own interests and abilities to meet life's challenges using our brain. And we do this because we're learning machines. We have incredible plasticity in our brains, meaning it changes all the time based on the environment that we're in, based on the learning that it wants to do about our environment, but also about things that are really kind of needed to manage our life. Our brains just simply don't have a limit. And, we're living in an incredible age now where information is right at our fingertips, right? So, a quick SWOT analysis on my intellectual wellness. Number one, I'm a lifelong learner. I want to learn as much as I can across my life. And I didn't recognize that when I was in school. School really beat the learning out of me. And it wasn't until college and late in college that I decided that I really enjoyed learning when I became passionate about a content. I'm also a lifelong studier. I want to look into what's going on out there. What are the new experts saying about certain things? I want to read the research. I want to read the articles. I want to watch the YouTube videos. I want to see the experiments. That's just fun for me because it helps me to feel really good about where we're going in humanity. Number three is this. I love micromastery. I am definitely not a plumber, but a few months ago, my sink got clogged in the bathroom and I watched some YouTube videos. I figured out how to disassemble my sink. I figured out how to remove the clog. And when I did, my wife was super pumped because that meant we didn't have to spend money out of our budget to bring in a plumber. But moreover than that, she just thought I was a stud. And what she didn't know is I just spent some time on YouTube. I didn't tell her. Heck no, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm more about like, hey, look, I am a stud. Let's pump up some relational health here by you thinking I'm a stud, right? So the idea is I love to micromaster. I'm never going to be a plumber, but I do want some skills. And you know what? That's easy to do now because we have podcasts, we have YouTube. Some weaknesses I have here, though, time. I don't always have time to read. I don't have time to listen to podcasts. I have to do that, like almost lump that in with running or biking or drive time. I mean, that's just the only efficient way I've got to do it. I'm also professionally biased. I listen to things or read things or watch things that I'm into. And that is mostly with the human body. That's health, that's longevity, that's performance. That's just kind of what I'm into. You might be into race cars. And if that's what you're into, that's probably what you're going to read about, listen to, and watch, right? I also have incredible hyperfocus. And on first, you're probably looking at that and thinking, well, Kendall's bragging. I'm not bragging. I put this in there as a weakness for a reason because when I get on something, I cannot break the focus off of it. Like, it's just all I can think about. If I want to buy a mountain bike, then all I do is I study mountain bikes and I read about mountain bikes and I'm looking for the right one. And it makes my wife crazy because that's all I want to talk about. And she's like, can we talk about like dinner tonight? And I'm like, no, I just want to talk about the wheel size of this mountain bike. And she's like, no, we're not doing that. And I have this hyper focus and it's a weakness. And if you struggle with that as well, you're empathetic to me and you understand what I'm talking about right now. It is absolutely pathological at times. Opportunities that I have, though, number one is because I'm a teacher, I get multiple long breaks. Number two, my work really encourages me to do some intellectual development, and so that's really cool. They even pay for me to travel and do some things. But number three, technology has opened the doors for this. Like, we can download books onto our phone and listen to them anytime, and I love being able to do that. I have some threats though that come into my intellectual wellness. Number one is I get some spatial interruptions, meaning like I could sit down in my chair at night and open my book up and start reading, and inevitably I'm going to get a kid up in my lap, and I'm so happy because I'm in the season of my life where that's going to happen. And so I'm going to put the book down and I'm going to give my kid the attention that they need and want. Number two is I overcommit, man. I overcommit all the time. I say yes to things that I should say no to, and that gets in the way of me being able to do things physically, socially, intellectually. And then lastly, I'm getting birthdays every year. And that's causing me to, forget some things or move away from some things that I would like to be able to participate in. But I just forget. And I worry about that. Is that going to get worse as I get older? I hope not. My last specific um, wellness dimension that I want to cover today that I actually give you a SWOT analysis on is my emotional wellness. This is appropriate expression of emotions and responses. And the reality is we all deal with difficult tasks or situations or things in our lives, and they're draining. And Craig Rochelle says, you cannot lead from the highest level or love from the deepest part of your heart if you are emotionally depleted. And that's so true. You got to think about this. When you're spent emotionally, it affects everything else, right? So think about that wheel. And if it's flat there, it's going to affect you physically, emotionally, spiritually. All these other things are going to come in. So how do you recharge? Well, you're either recharging best on your own or with another person or a group. It probably has a blend of both, but you're probably out there biased to one or the other. I can tell you this, an emotion that is guaranteed to improve every time you use it is gratitude, saying thank you. You cannot say thank you and not feel good because those two go hand in hand. Let me give you some quick strengths. Number one, I know I need to fill up when I'm emptied. I know I need to. The question is, do I do it? It's not that I can't really, find the time to do that. It's just, will I do it? I'm going to have to, stick the key in the lock and turn it. Number two is I pray a lot. And I'm going to talk more about my spiritual balance here in a minute, but I use prayer as a key strength to improve my emotions. Number three is I confess to my wife when I'm weak. If I know I'm emotionally kind of unstable, I'm going to tell her because I need her to expect that my emotions are going to affect my actions. And so I will speak that to her as soon as I recognize it. Some weaknesses that I have, I'm embarrassed when I'm emotional, and I don't always like to tell people, and so I'll deny it. Number two is I bottle it up, and I keep it bottled up because I think that it's safe there. It's not safe there. A secret only has power as long as it's a secret. And so when I express that and I get that out and I confess it, it no longer has power. And that's incredibly empowering to me to know that. Number three, though, I'll blame others. It's your fault. It's not my fault. You made me angry. That could not be there could not be a worse statement in the world because other people can't make you angry. Anger is an emotion that you own and you control. Opportunities, I get to apologize. And I hope that I do. If I offend someone because of my emotions, I want to go and apologize, especially my kids, because where else are they going to learn how to manage that on their own, right? Number two, I can say thanks. I can always say thank you. And number three is I can empathize, understanding that people go through things too. And so sometimes I just need to give a little bit, yield on their side. It's okay to do that. You'll never regret yielding, but you will often regret action. Number one threat, though, for me, I'm a judger. Are you a judger? I'm a judger. I judge people all the time. I compare. And I think, if they did this, then this would happen. I give them the conditional statement. And that's awful of me, but I do it. And so I'm working on that. Number two, I will not listen to the other side of the story. I just won't. I always think that I know and everything is all good. Number three, I will have a fit and I will place other people in a defensive position. And that's not fair. It is just not fair, because when I do that, they immediately have to react or respond. And many times they have a hard time falling into the grace giving position of saying, oh, he's having a bad day, right? What do? They get defensive, and then we get conflict. And conflict is never good, not for our health. So, real quick, environmental wellness, what is that? That's you doing good by the resources around you, supporting your local surroundings in whatever way you can, protecting your resources, and thinking about sustainable practices. There's a lot more to that we should really kind of get into, but that's just kind of where I'm going to leave that for today. I also want to talk about spiritual wellness, but I want to be very careful and also very respectful, because I understand that everyone watching this is probably not spiritual or religious. You don't have practices that you're currently involved with. One thing that I want to tell you is that spiritual health for me has definitely leveled the rest of my wellness dimensions. I use it to lead those wellness dimensions. I believe that I do have a higher purpose and meaning and value. And when I use and seek out spiritual wellness, those things improve. I also know that when I'm weak in other areas, if I will focus on the spiritual wellness, they improve. But again, I am not trying to push my beliefs on you. I'm not trying to tell you that you're wrong or anything bad about you if you don't agree. But I am saying, can you consider what strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you have by your position? Because that's one area that I can do. And they are out there. And so consider that as we go forward. But again, let's keep this on a very respectful and loving type of conversation. So I'm going to conclude now, but here's what's coming up. Your next video is my wife and I, who's an accountant. She's going to come in and she's going to talk occupations. She's going to talk financial management. And what you're going to see is there's some really good stuff that's going to come out of that. I'll leave you with this. How do you balance your wellness? You're going to have to strive for improvement in all wellness dimensions, but it's a lifelong process. Number two, you have to expect progress, not perfection. It will never happen. Perfect people don't exist. You know what? The truth of the matter is we all have hangups, hurts, and habits. The sooner you change your expectation for yourself and other people, the faster reality will lead to happiness. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Hope that you learned something. I'm anxious to see what you guys say and your comments. Don't be afraid to leave me some good ones. See you later.